Another neat way to use conditional formatting is with our numbers, our percentages here. So if I have some math scores, I've got percentages, and I want to see quickly kind of what the overall trends are, what scores look like, I can use something with conditional formatting to create a heat map. And a heat map is showing us kind of the highs and lows within our range of our data set. So the way that we do that, same thing as before, go ahead and highlight the data where you want to conditionally format it. We're going to go up to Format, Conditional Formatting again. When we look at our sidebar here, we have some options. So we're actually going to, instead of a single color, we're actually going to come over here and choose Color Scale. And when I do that, you can see how it automatically starts to adjust these colors. We have some darker colors and some lighter colors. And by default, here our minimum value, the lowest scores are going to be darker, and our max value or our higher scores are going to be lighter. Now you might like this as it is, or you might want to adjust it. So by default, it chooses this green color scale. If I click on this, I have some other options. So I might decide that I would rather change it and have colors like this. And here I have my minimum value being green, my max value being red. That might not make sense. Maybe I would like to switch it. And this way I'm looking at green scores as being high, so I'm not concerned. And the scores that are red in color are low. And so I can look at a heat map that way. Okay. If you want to change these colors, maybe you don't like this color, you can go through here and click on the paint bucket, and you can go ahead and customize these colors to match whatever scheme works for you. All right, so you have the ability to go ahead and do that. If you also wanted to change the midpoint, so right now we just have two colors and it fades. If I wanted to change the midpoint to something else, I can go ahead and do that and adjust my colors accordingly, depending on what you would like to do. When you are done with that, go ahead and click on Done. And as information gets updated, then the heat map will automatically adjust as well. Okay, so we have our conditional formatting here with our color scale, and that's fine, but maybe we want to actually have certain colors show up depending on a range within our data instead of it automatically choosing the color scale for us in our heat map. So we can also do that. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my data here, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to delete that rule. Now remember, if this sidebar is not here, you can always go up to Format, Conditional Formatting, and that will bring up the sidebar. So I'm going to go ahead and add a rule. And what I'm going to do here, instead of doing a color scale, I'm actually going to define the rule. So for this scenario, I'm going to say that if scores are 90% or higher, I want them to be green. So the way that I do that is in my format rules, instead of saying is not empty, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say greater than, or I can choose greater than or equal to. So I'm just going to choose greater than, and I'm going to say it's greater than 89%. So if they're greater than 89%, then they will be green. So you can see how that has already highlighted that for me. All right, and now let's say that my next range is I want it from scores that are between 70 to 89. I would like for those to be yellow. So what I can do is add another rule. It's already got my same range. It's kind of bringing that in for me. And if I just change this to be 69 instead, I can change this now to yellow. And you'll see those scores come up in yellow. Now notice that it does not override the higher scores, the 90 and above, because I put that formula in first. All right, now let's say that I want to create another color where my scores between 50 and 70 are maybe a lighter red. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Another Rule. And I will change this now to be 49%, and I'll change my fill color to something like this. And I want those final scores to really show up, so I'm going to make those a dark red. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Another Row. And instead of, what I can do here is just say greater than 0%. Change my paint bucket to this dark red, and I am going to change my text a white, and I'm going to make. So you can go ahead and adjust both the fill within the cell, and you can also adjust it. So by doing it and clicking on Done, and now you can see that my data validation rules are here. Now I mentioned how the green will not be overridden by this value here, even though so for example 96% is greater than 69%, but it won't be overridden because this value is on top. So if I want this to override, you can adjust and drag your rules around to do that if you need to do that. Okay, so that is how you can use conditional formatting to set this for certain values. All right, so in this example, what I want to show you is how we can use conditional formatting to help us in a situation, for example, when we are making groups. So I have my Reading Groups tab here, and I have a list of students, and this list I've just used cell referencing to bring in my class list. And over here in this section, I have 4 groups for my Reading Groups, and I've made a data validation menu that contains all of my student names. So if I'm going through and I am putting in names here for my groups, as I'm doing this, whether this be reading groups or field trip groups or any type of groups that you want to do, sometimes I'm going through and I kind of forget, okay, which student, I sometimes have 1 or 2 students that I didn't seem to place, and going through and finding out, okay, which student is that? Can take a little bit of time. So we can use some conditional formatting to help us if we still need to place students. So let me show you how to set that up. What I would like to do is, if a student name over here gets placed into a group, I want this name to be crossed off so that I know I've used that student's name, placed that student. So let's take a look at what we can do to make that happen. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my student names, and I'm going to go up to Format, Conditional Formatting. And over in the sidebar here, I need to do something that's a little bit more detailed. I'm going to come down and I'm going to do a custom formula. So I go all the way to the bottom where it says Custom Formula Is. And in this value section here, what I need to do is I have to type in a formula. So I'm going to type in equals and count if. So what this is doing is saying, I want you to check and see if you notice this information. So you're going to count it, and then I have to put in parentheses, and the syntax is a little bit complicated, but I'm asking it to look in this range here, starting with A2. And so the way that I need to do that is I actually have to put in some $signs here because I want that to stay. I don't want that to move. So I'm going to put in the $signs to say this is exactly where I want you to start looking for it. And I put in my colon, and I'm going to put in F for column F because I want it to start at A and I want it to go all the way over to column F. And I put a comma. And I'm going to say, if within that range you find a value that is in column A, starting at A2, what I want you to do is count it if you see more than one of those. So you can already see Jim started to turn green there because I have it there. Okay, so just copy and paste this formula in, or copy it as is, making sure that your starting area is where your data starts and it covers your whole range. For mine, it's up to F here. Now I can go ahead and change the way that this looks. So as my student names come in, what I want to do is with my fill, I'm going to fill it with a gray. I don't need to see it anymore. I kind of still want to see it. I'm going to change my text to be a lighter color, and I'm actually going to cross it out. So that way I know I've used that. Go ahead and click on Done. And now, as I go through here and add names, you will see the names starting to get crossed out. So when you're going through, hopefully this will save you some time for something like putting students into groups. Now, one thing to keep in mind, one of the things that does not work with this is if I end up putting in like Angel I have in group 2, and I end up for some reason putting Angel into group 1 as well, even though she's in here twice, this does not change. I don't get another situation that says, oh, well, it's actually you've used it twice. So just keep that in mind. That is one of the limitations. However, you can go ahead and use that to place all of your students into your groups, and I hope that that will help speed up some of your work. Okay, so that was a few different ways using conditional formatting. I hope that you found these lessons useful and that you'll be able to apply them to your work moving. Thanks for watching. You can find out more at smithvisualizations.com.